on. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Cabinet of Staffordshire County Council today, Wednesday the 16th of March. I wasn't meant to be here. I was doing jury duty, but we came to a verdict yesterday and I was discharged. So you've got an unexpected Councillor White. You be the judge of who's the better looking one, but for the time being, I'm in the chair. So I think it's me. Right. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, Mr. Bradbury?
Good morning, Leader. No, I'm not in receipt of any apologies for this morning's meeting.
Thank you. Second item on the agenda is the declarations of interest in accordance with Standing Order 16. Do we have any declarations of interest? For the record, nobody indicating. Third item is the decision notice of the meeting held on the 16th of February 2022. Can I sign that off as a correct record?
Move it.
I've had moved. Thank you. And then on to agenda item number 4, which is the leaders' update. Colleagues, our disgust over Putin's invasion of Ukraine grows by the day, as we hear more reports of the unacceptable targeting of the civilian population. The County Council stands with the people of Ukraine. In Staffordshire, we have a proud history of helping those fleeing from war or persecution. Most recently, we have welcomed almost 200 Afghans, providing support and accommodation to help them settle in the United Kingdom. Our leader, that's myself, because it wasn't me meant to be reading this report, and the leaders of the 8 district and borough councils wrote to the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary last week. Collectively, we stand ready to offer Ukrainian refugees a warm welcome to our county, should our help be needed, and we are urging the government to clear any barriers so we can help those who desperately need it. Unusually for a leader's statement, I'm just going to pause there just to allow any members to make any comments that they feel they wish to add to that before we move on. Any comments to add? No, I think that captures it fairly neatly. Continuing the theme of helping those most in need, we welcomed a government announcement this month of new funding to find permanent homes for children in care. We now work with Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, Stoke-on-Trent councils through Together for Children Regional Adoption Partnership. In the last 12 months, the partnership has found homes for more than 100 children, and the new funding will enhance the excellent support already in place to find more children a safe and loving home without delay. And at this occasion, as with many other occasions, I wish to thank our frontline social workers in children's services for all the absolutely brilliant work that they do. They're often not thanked enough. They do a difficult job in trying circumstances, dealing with some very, very difficult cases. And I'd just like to thank, on behalf of the Cabinet and Staffordshire County Council, the tremendous work that they do for our families. The County Council is also making a further investment to meet the growing demands for support for children with special educational needs and disabilities. Since 2014, the numbers of children with an education, health and care plan has almost doubled from 3,300 to 6,400. Last month, we welcomed Ofsted back to see the improvements we have been making in this area. Inspectors noted progress, but also identified that there is some more work to do. Our additional investment will fund a range of practical support, help us to assess children more quickly, and provide more support in mainstream schools. And I'd like to thank Councillor Price for the hard work he's doing as the portfolio holder for Education and Send. Thank you, Jonathan. And I know you've got a lot more to do, and we're with you on that journey. From caring for our most vulnerable children to looking after our older residents, the Council has received an additional £20 million from the NHS through the Better Care Fund. This will enable us to sustain key services during 2022 to 2023, for example, hospital discharge and integrated equipment services. It will also allow us to increase the rate we pay home care providers to £20 an hour, which will allow them to increase staff wages and help recruitment and retention. This is another great example of the Council and the NHS working together to improve health and care services, and Councillor Jessel's experience with the NHS is proving to be invaluable in helping us to navigate our way through that, as with Dr. Harling as the Director. Finally, colleagues, one of our top priorities is creating the right conditions for our economy to grow and generate more better paid jobs and opportunities for people in Staffordshire. We do this by working with government, business and other partners to invest in the infrastructure needed, including business sites, skills and training and transport. Proposals for major improvements along the A50, A500 from Cheshire to the East Midlands were published last month. And the upgrade of this corridor is vital to Staffordshire's future growth, supporting businesses including JCB and major learning institutions including Staffordshire and Keele universities. We will work with partners across the Midlands to make the case and demonstrate how major investment in the corridor will reap huge rewards for the national economy. And there's an item that we'll have during the course of the Cabinet covering some of that. And so on to our next item, ladies and gentlemen. Agenda item number 5 is the minutes of the meeting of the Property Subcommittee held on the 2nd of March 2022. Moved by Councillor DeVille, seconded by Councillor Price. Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is the update from the COVID-19 member-led Outbreak Control Board. Councillor Dr McMahon, we're with you.
Thank you, Leader. In recent days, we've seen some increase in the numbers in the community. Staffordshire rates peaked on January the 4th when we witnessed a case rate of 2,300 per 100,000. This fell to 235 per 100,000 by the end of that month. We're now as of yesterday morning, 467 per 100,000. This is slightly higher than the West Midlands average, but lower than the England average. West Midlands is 422, and of yesterday, England was 577. Hospitalisations are stable, but there's normally a lag between hospitalisations and the community position. And if there is going to be an increase, we would see that we'd start to see it this week. In the country as a whole, hospitalisations have increased a little. But it is the case that many of those are diagnosed on admission with COVID rather than being admitted with COVID because they're ill with it. So we need to put that in some context. It is the case that in the country as a whole, there's been a slight increase in all ages. But it is only slight, and slight certainly compared to what it was like at the beginning of January. The vaccination programme is continuing, and we remain in the top quartile for vaccination coverage in the West Midlands. The NHS locally has looked at the delivery vehicle for the vaccine, remain of the view that the current logistics remain the best for delivery. That's the PCNs and the community pharmacies picking up the bulk of the demand. The spring booster for those over the age of 75 will commence next Monday, March the 21st. Residents must be 6 months or more past their last dose before they become eligible. The 5 to 11-year-old programme for those not clinically vulnerable will commence on April the 4th to coincide with the Easter holidays. This is not a school-based programme, but the school team will be actively involved in this endeavour. On the 21st of February, the government published the Living with COVID plan. If you now test positive, there is no longer a requirement to self-isolate, but there is advice and guidance to do so. The Test, Trace and Isolate payment scheme will no longer be available to those on low incomes who did test positive after February the 24th. Those who tested positive before the 24th can still access the scheme up until April the 1st. Likewise, the statutory sick pay is reverting back to pre-pandemic provisions. The health protection coronavirus restrictions put in place in July and September of 2020 have been revoked, and the Coronavirus Act provisions for March 2020 have in large part been disapplied. This means that the powers conferred upon the County Council in 2020 have in large measure been withdrawn. As of April, free public COVID testing will be removed. That's PCR and lateral flow. The PCR tests for hospital admissions will remain, and lateral flow in high-risk settings, principally care homes, will likewise remain extinct. The Council will support the prevention and management of outbreaks, particularly in high-risk settings, support the NHS in the vaccine endeavour, and give public health advice where appropriate. The member-led local outbreak control groups in the district and boroughs have currently been stood down, and the county-wide board now meets every 4 weeks. Whilst we are mindful of those who have lost loved ones and those who remain understandably fearful of the virus, and those whose health, well-being and livelihoods have suffered due to the restrictions we have all had to bear, We have much to be grateful for, and we owe our thanks to many. The scientists who worked relentlessly to give the vaccine to us, I think we need to be mindful of. The Staffordshire residents who do the right thing and support one another has been commendable. The school and care providers, the worry and difficulty of making decisions that they thought they would never have to face, I think we need to be reminded of. That can be very, very difficult. Businesses doing the right thing despite the commercial risk in doing so. The voluntary sector did an outstanding response to those most in need. And NHS council staff working so closely together like never before and adapting sometimes against the odds. These are all positive legacies to which we must grasp as we move on. We cannot be sure of what the future will look like, but should the numbers increase dramatically or a new pernicious variant comes our way, I am assured that the COVID machinery of the County Council can be stood up in very short order. We are now learning to live with COVID. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Parry.
It's it's really a question of, my question is about kind of aftermath implications in a sense. I think when we were in the middle of the pandemic, there were some concerns about people's access to healthcare and that it may cause a build-up of demand that could cause greater implications on serious health conditions, as in people with either cancer care or other acute type illnesses not being detected early enough because of access. And therefore we were likely to see post-pandemic that increasing and spiking possibly after the pandemic. Has that materialised, or was that something which was actually managed better than we thought it was?
I'm on now, thank you. There has been a very significant increase in the disease burden in the community as a result of COVID. And we are doing everything we can to support the NHS to help deal with that. It's not just waiting lists, it's people who haven't gone when they've got symptoms when they normally would. I asked for the figures for those who had emergency open heart surgery because of very severe heart attacks, comparing the 19 figures with the 20 figures in the hospitals in Staffordshire. And in 2019, the numbers whose chests were opened because of this were 19, and in 2020 it was 3. I just think that perhaps tells us something. There's two things we can do. One is support the NHS as best we can to help get through the backlog, encourage folk to present who've got symptoms. But the second thing is the way we use our public health budget. And we are endeavouring now, particularly when a couple of these providers are due for renewal in terms of their contracts, to do the very best thing we can to help those whose weight has increased, who've become diabetic, who have heart disease, who've got agoraphobia because they can't get out the house on their own. And we will use that money the best possible way we can to help people who've suffered as a result of the pandemic.
Let me come back briefly, Lena. Just, I mean, we know that the NHS has been given significant amounts of money, presumably partly to deal with both the impact of the pandemic itself, but also presumably associated pressures, as we're now talking about. What is the evidence then that the NHS is able to, provide additional capacity to get through this backlog, or are we to assume that this trend, if you like, in this pent-up demand will continue? I mean, where is the intervention here?
Oh, thank you. The money, I'm sure, for the NHS is very welcome. The real rate limiting factor isn't just the financial resource, so it's the human resource. And we can pay, or the NHS can pay people to do longer hours, but they're already on their knees, many of them, given what's happened with COVID. I know that they're doing more work by engaging the private sector and using private hospitals more for NHS work. It's moves like that will help deliver the outcome that we need, namely getting these numbers down and getting people to present such that they can be treated. Whether these initiatives will work in a timely fashion remains to be seen, but the NHS are trying their best, but it's difficult.
Thank you. Councillor Tagg, Councillor Jessel.
Thank you, Leader. I think we'll be living with the consequences of particularly the lockdowns for years to come, the effect on the health service and people's lives and socially as well. I think it will take a while to get over it. But I think this is the last report we're going to receive from the Outbreak Board at Cabinet, I believe it says in the report. And I think I'd just like to thank Johnny McMahon and also yourself, Leader, for chairing the Outbreak Board. I'm the member of the Outbreak Board for Newcastle Borough on that, and I think during this whole 2 years of the pandemic, how we've got through it, how we've worked together as councils and as a community, I think it's great to see what we've done over that time. And I think we're learning now to live with COVID. I think we see the figures going up, but also we've got one of the most vaccinated populations in the world, and we've got to learn to live with it, and I think we are doing that. And I think that board had a crucial role to play. I think Staffordshire's voice, we made representations to government on the tier lockdowns, didn't we, in pre-Christmas 2020, and I think it's been I've found that as a really reassuring thing as a district leader to be seeing what other districts are doing, seeing what the county was doing on this massive health issue we've had for these couple of years. And I think, again, thank you to Johnny McMahon and also to you as chair of that group, and also to Richard Harding and his team as well, of the county team, and also the public health team as well, that have really helped to get the Staffordshire through this. And I think we're in a period now where we can move forward with confidence. I think that we do have a plan, and we have a backup plan, as it says in this report. If more variants come along, we can quickly step up again and step up our response to that to protect the people of Staffordshire. Thank you.
Councillor Jessel.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, Councillor Tagg has stolen a little bit of my thunder, because I feel that we've benefited throughout this whole pandemic of having two highly experienced medical people, both of whom are sitting on my right-hand side. Their expertise, their professional experience has actually, I believe, made a huge contribution, not only to this local authority, but the people we represent. And I do sincerely thank Councillor McMahon for the very thorough way that he's presented his reports, the very knowledgeable way he's answered questions. I think we're in a fairly unique position in having somebody with that professional expertise and clarity of thought as a cabinet member, and I would like to express my sincere thanks to Councillor McMahon for everything he's done throughout this very difficult period, but also will continue to do, because as one problem abates a little, there is undoubtedly going to be others that will come forward. There are two things that I'd like to say. Is that at overview and scrutiny earlier on this week, comments were made about you go abroad and realise that a lot of countries are not in the position that we are, that they've still got restrictions on your movement, restrictions on what you do. And actually, I think we are, as a nation, not terribly good at patting ourselves on the back, but I think the scientific advances that were done in record time with vaccines has actually afforded us the opportunity to have our freedom back as we've got it now. Some of us would have liked to have got it back a long time before, but I think we do need to recognise, without those scientific advances, without the very difficult decisions that some of the politicians took to back that scientific work has actually given us the opportunities we've got now. And there's one thanks that Councillor McMahon did miss out. I think we have to thank the British taxpayer, who will be paying for all the support that industry, commerce, individuals have had with all the support, financial support. People complain about no access to free lateral flow tests. Nothing in life is free. They're paid for by the British taxpayer. And the British taxpayer will be paying back for all that support, which was absolutely right and proper. And when we see, you know, our unemployment figures are far less than was originally anticipated, the British taxpayer is going to have to foot the bill for a long, long time. And I don't think we should forget that. None of us like paying taxes. Certainly none of us like paying more taxes. But actually, the government's had to borrow significant money to get us through this 2-year period, to give the NHS more money to try and overcome the backlogs. So the good old British taxpayer needs to be thanked. That's each and every one of us here. But we shouldn't forget that money doesn't grow on trees. Huge amounts, you know, I'd almost call them telephone directory sums of money have been spent. It's been done properly. Thank goodness that support was there. But rest assured, it's going to have to take years, if not decades, to pay that back. In terms of the NHS, and I notice, unfortunately, Councillor Parry isn't here, I think the NHS has been given additional resources. Councillor McMahon has quite rightly said it's not just about money, it's the people with the skills to perform those services. But the one thing the NHS has got to learn is you can't carry on doing things in the same way and expecting a different outcome. They have to do things in a far more efficient way. And whether it's through the new type of diagnostic centres that they're looking to set up, they have got to do things in a far more efficient way, get people diagnosed quickly and then treated. But once again, my sincere thanks to Councillor McMahon. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor DeVille.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Wholeheartedly echo Mrs Jessel's and Mr Tagg's thanks to yourself, Chairman, to Dr McMahon and indeed to Dr Richard Harling. As member of the Outbreak Control Board, we sat, Chairman, in some dark times, didn't we? Had some extremely difficult conversations over the past 2 years. Indeed, they were difficult times. As we look forward, Chairman, with tremendous brightness and tremendous optimism, I feel, and gosh, do we deserve that, having gone through the 2 years that we've gone through. As we move forward, I think there remains a real responsibility on ourselves. There remains a real personal responsibility to continue looking after each other and looking out for each other. Because in those dark days, gosh, wasn't the response from local communities and the British public tremendous? I think it's really important. Of course, the NHS have got a major part to play in the challenging future. But there's a real place for ourselves to play, I think. And just to carry on as we recover. And, you know, we've got a bright future. We've got the Queen Platinum Jubilee coming up. I think we'll see the very best of the British public again. And I really think, Councillor Jessel, that community spirit that I wish we could bottle from 2 years ago, I really feel that we will see that moving forward, and we'll continue to look after ourselves and look out for each other. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Absolutely associate myself with everything that Councillor Jessel and Councillor DeVille have just said, and just to add my thanks to all of those in the community of Staffordshire who have helped over the last 2 years. I can see that they're already regrouping to help those who need it, who are coming into our county imminently. And I just think that, as Councillor DeVille has said, that it's a remarkable goodwill from the public that's helped us all the way through this and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Through adversity, we're often brought closer together, aren't we? And I think that the relationships we developed during the course of the past 2 years through things like the Local Outbreak Control Board, where at some points we were meeting weekly, everybody turning up from every district and borough to every single meeting without fail to deal with the crisis that we had at hand across Staffordshire was tremendous. And the amount of effort that went into this has been unbelievable. We do see our community. We have seen our communities stepping up, and I think that has been a really wonderful thing to observe through adversity. So thank you very much indeed for what is probably the last, hopefully, fingers crossed, the last update from the COVID member-led Local Outbreak Control Board. Thank you to you, Councillor Dr McMahon, and to Dr Harling for your efforts. Tremendous. With that, I think there is a recommendation that I need you to read out there, Councillor McMahon, and then we'll move on.
The Cabinet is asked to note the March update from the member-led Local Outbreak Control Board, note that this is the final update planned for the Board, and extend the Council's thanks to all those who have played a role in managing the pandemic.
It is moved. All those in favour? Agreed. Thank you. Moving on then to the Staffordshire Means Back to Business oral update brought to you by the Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. So these updates tend to be about the dynamism, strength and resilience of the Staffordshire economy. And over the past couple of years, that resilience point has been particularly important. But the long-term themes are the dynamism and strength of our economy, the businesses that we have and the workers who work within them. But today I felt it was important to focus a little bit on the interconnected nature of our economy here in Staffordshire with the national economy and indeed the broader economy, and the impact of the events in Ukraine, which have fed into some wider factors that we've been watching develop over recent times in terms of challenges for all economies, including our own. We're very fortunate here in Staffordshire that very few of us will ever truly understand the impact on people trapped in a conflict zone, such as Ukraine, or who are forced to become refugees. But the economic consequences of those actions, and also of the sanctions that we're rightly placing on Russia, do come to impact people in their homes in places like Staffordshire. And it's important that people in our county are aware that we are mindful of that, and we are working very hard to make sure that we monitor the impacts on our economy from events outside of our county, and that we are taking appropriate steps where we are able to in this authority to address those. So I just want to highlight a few of the key areas where we are seeing an impact from global factors, including the conflicts in Ukraine. The first of those is energy prices. We're all aware that energy prices have been increasing for some time, but there is an additional impact from the war in Ukraine, and that's particularly important in Staffordshire in our manufacturing sector, and within that particularly automotive and ceramics. We're also seeing higher prices for non-energy commodities such as metals, foodstuffs such as wheat and fertilisers, to name but a few, and those again have an impact on the Staffordshire economy. And thirdly, we are seeing higher overall costs in our labour market, where happily we have very low unemployment, but we do see challenges in terms of demand outstripping supply. And those are areas where we work with local businesses, also with local business groups such as our Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Small Businesses, etc., and also with regional bodies and with national government to make sure that we're highlighting the needs of our businesses, advocating for them, and where we can, taking steps to help those businesses. So I felt it was just important to highlight that, and I'm happy to discuss that further with colleagues if colleagues wish to ask me any questions about that. But the overall picture with the Staffordshire economy remains that it is a strong, robust and growing economy. I think that was well illustrated in one of the sectors that did struggle quite hard over the last 2 years, and that's tourism. and the hospitality sector, where earlier this month, the leader of the council was, I'm happy to say, deputising for me on that occasion at our Staffordshire Tourism and Good Food Awards at Keele Hall, where we welcomed over 240 guests from the tourism sector, celebrating wins in 14 award categories, celebrating our tourism and leisure sector. I understand it was a great night, and I think the thing that came across from it is that that's a sector that is well and truly bouncing back, and a sector that we here at Staffordshire County Council, through Enjoy Staffordshire, is strongly supporting, and something that we look forward to do more in. The other area that I'll highlight in terms of promoting Staffordshire is our new investment prospectus, which was launched this week at the MIPIM conference in France, which is Europe's largest property forum. With Staffordshire County Council acting as the convening body, pulling together the offers from our 8 districts and boroughs, some fantastic opportunities for property investors in a county where there is already an enormous amount of private sector economic activity investing in places such as I-54, ROF Featherstone, Pets at Home at Red Hill, and of course Chatterley Valley, which this council is helping to make viable. So a lot of activity going on. The final thing that I always like to mention is our universal credit rates, which I'm pleased to say have fallen again. Again by a small number, but our claimant rate at 3.1% remains considerably lower than the national rate at 4.4% and the West Midlands rate at 5.4%. So a strong economy, one that is linked into the country and the world, one that we watch very carefully and we help where we can, but one that I think we can all feel very confident in. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, and note the way that Councillor White's able to delegate upwards and get me to do the Taste of Staffordshire Awards. But I've got to say, it was a wonderful occasion. I presented a number of awards on behalf of the on the evening. One lady came up having won an award, shaking like a leaf, almost on the verge of tears. I've never won anything in my life. I can't believe I've actually won this. This is absolutely amazing. And I was trying to sort of get her to calm down for the photo shoot. We should celebrate our businesses across Staffordshire. And these occasions that we take to celebrate our businesses go down really, really well with people who work like stink to bring in the money in a sector which has been profoundly affected by the pandemic. And to celebrate that success, and in particular to be with that lady on the awards night who was just almost speechless at having won the award, and using it as the launch pad for the recovery that she's looking forward to undertaking post-COVID was absolutely wonderful. So we should be doing more of it, and I know you do an awful lot of this, Councillor White, celebrating the success of our businesses. We all do, because we need successful businesses across this Staffordshire to make sure we've got more better paid jobs, and also to raise the taxes to pay for the services that Councillor Jessel referred to earlier. So absolutely wonderful news, and thank you for everything you're doing with the portfolio. Any other comments for Councillor White before we move on to the next item on the agenda? No, and I was to say, wonderful awards, and the beef was tremendous. The next item on the agenda item number 8, is the Highways and Transport Capital Programme. Now, Councillor Williams is away at the moment, so we've gone for an upgrade, and Councillor DeVille, I hope he's not watching. Councillor DeVille, you are bringing this report to us, and I'm absolutely delighted that you are.
Thank you, Chairman. And if Mr. Williams is not watching, I will remind him that this item's had an upgrade, Chairman. We all know, Chairman, that good quality roads are vital to enable our communities and our businesses. Deputy Leaders just speaking about the growth of our businesses in Staffordshire as we recover, and it's essential that good quality roads help our businesses and our communities to thrive. The highway network is the largest and the most visible asset that the County Council is responsible for. We all use our roads every day, whether it's taking the children and the grandchildren to school, whether it's going to work or college, whether it's travelling to do the weekly shop. And the way that we manage and maintain our highways has a direct impact on Staffordshire County Council's ability to deliver our ambitious vision of being an ambitious and sustainable county where everyone has the opportunity to prosper, be healthy and be happy. And the quality of our roads also directly affects the quality of our lives, doesn't it? Because we all use them every day. This report, Chairman, sets out how the County Council will invest the highways and transport capital fundings for 2022-2023. There are two important parts to this report that I want to present within the capital programme. One is the maintenance and renewals programme, which cover repair of roads, footways, bridges, drainage, etc. And the second part is the integrated transport improvements, which is really important. That covers local road safety schemes that we may have and projects to improve walking, cycling, and again, generally improve the quality of our lives. Chairman, an important part of our corporate plan is to fix more roads. We need to fix more roads. We need to improve and increase defect repairs and improve our digital and our transport connections and our connectivity. We know, Chairman, that improving our highways is one of the top priorities for Staffordshire people. And despite the challenges that we face and we will face, we have a key objective. We really want Staffordshire people to see an improvement in the condition of our highways over the next 4 years. Real improvements that we'll all see. So how will we pay for these improvements? This year, colleagues, we'll be investing over £50 million in a range of major projects and vital improvements to road maintenance. This £50 million will be delivered through an integrated transport programme that's looking after the road safety projects, the cycleways, the footways, and improving our quality of life in our 8 districts, and also through our highways maintenance capital programme. This £50 million consists of over 40 million invested in highways maintenance. That's made up of the government grant, the annual government grant, plus an extra 15 million that Staffordshire County Council has invested into the capital maintenance programme. Added to that, Chairman, the integrated transport improvements budget is £7.55 million, made up also of a government grant, some developer contributions and other funding from partner organisations. So looking first, colleagues, at maintenance, at highways maintenance, the Staffordshire network includes 6,200 kilometres of carriageway, 4,360 kilometres of footways, over 1,000 structures, and incredibly more than 115,000 streetlights and illuminated signs. So we've got a considerable maintenance programme, and the 50 million, colleagues, is a considerable investment. However, it's not all about money, Chairman. We have a programme of working practice improvements. We have a programme about placing greater focus on customer quality and focus on customer requirements. We have a culture of place improvement rather than just defect repairs. That sounds a bit local authority speak. What I mean there, Chairman, is that our teams will now go out and not just repair a Category 1 or a Category 2 defect, they'll go out and repair that area. So a fairly common complaint that we all have is that 2 potholes were repaired in a certain area, but there's another one just 20 yards down the road that was left. So we put in extra money into the capital pot to pay for this place improvement. These investments, of course, Chairman, will be spent wisely. We will always ensure best value. We'll also totally focus on delivering improvements that everyone will see. So that's the maintenance side of the capital budget. The integrated transport programme consists of £7.7 million. And these will help to deliver our 8 strategies across the county, which supports our strategic plan, and probably more importantly, supports the 8 districts in their local plans to make improvements around walking, cycling, generally enjoying the county more, and making each district and the county a great place to live, great place to learn, and a great place to play. And Chairman, the final aspect of this capital report is the developer-funded highway projects. These are traditionally delivered through an S278 agreements, and there are 3 developer-funded highway projects valued at over £2 million each that we're expected to be under construction this year. And they are, the Deputy Leader mentioned 2 of them earlier. These highway improvements help to build on that economic development that the Deputy Leader was speaking of earlier. The 3 areas are A, Chatterley Valley in Newcastle, in Featherstone in South Staffordshire, and at Beaconside in Stafford. That's the details around the capital report, Chairman. I'll take any questions and any points that members wish to raise before reading the recommendations, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor DeVille. That's a comprehensive report, and the amount of work that's gone into that is been huge. So I'd just like to pay tribute to those officers and the portfolio holder. In Councillor Williams' absence, he has worked really hard on this over the past few months, and it's involved a great deal of effort on the part of all of us corporately to put in that extra £15 million into that programme. Councillor Tagg, Councillor White.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to echo your comments there about welcoming this. I think it's a great report and a good highways and transport capital programme. I think also I always bang on at Cabinet about the green thread, don't I? And that green thread is included in this as well. There's a imaginatively named Road to Net Zero for highways budget, is quite appropriate, whereby 2033, you know, significant amount of our fleet will have been decarbonised as we move obviously towards the 2050 target for the County Council. That's embedded in this with a plan to get to there as well. So that's really important. But for me, as a local councillor, as a cabinet member, also as a resident of the county, I'm really pleased of the extra investment we're putting into the highways, that 15.5 million on key things, as Mr DeVille said, the things that really affect our roads and our residents' perception of the roads. That's doing that job right first time. It's making sure we do all the potholes that are in an area and not just do one and then leave 3 or 4 just as bad sitting there. Really bad to see, and our residents really get annoyed. And also we're coming out of another winter period which has been really bad on our roads, with, you know, salting roads is making them safe from ice, but also that is really degrading the roads, because the salt does degrade the roads. So that sort of springtime purge of potholes, getting rid of that winter work stack is really important. I think that focus on customer services is something we've been trying to get right for many years. I can remember chairing a scrutiny committee back in, goodness knows what it was, 2010, 11, 12 or something, talking about we've got to get the communications back to the residents. It's winning the battle is actually to communicate this. It may take longer than people want, but at least they know when it's going to happen and they've got a time scale and they're in regular communication. I think we're beginning to get that now with the email returns that come back on complaints that have gone in. I think there's still a long way to go. And that 1.5 million really in there for that type of going the right first time approach, and the comms around that right, I think is really important. So really pleased with this, and the green flag is included. I wouldn't be doing my job as portfolio of climate change if I didn't shout about that, and that's really good as we move towards our fleet is one of the big carbon problems we've got, and there's a plan here, a road to net zero within this strategy, which is really good. Thank you.
That has got to have come from Mr Marcucci, that sort of strapline. But anyway, we've got Councillor White, Councillor Parry and Councillor Jessel.
That's right. Thank you very much, Leader. Thanks, Mr DeVille. I don't know whether it was an upgrade or not, not having heard Councillor Williams present it, but thank you for presenting that. I think it's important to note how interchangeable we are as Cabinet members on these reports. We all work on them. The portfolio holder leads, but we all own these reports as a cabinet, and I thought that was extremely well presented. The business strand is just something that I wanted to touch upon for a moment because it is incredibly important, and it's not just our manufacturers whose product roll along those roads to their destinations around the country and the world, but it's also the attractiveness of Staffordshire as a place to do business and to work as well. Roads are a fundamental part of that, so it's really important that we understand that as a function of this, as well as allowing all of us to go about our normal lives. But the other thing I just wanted to draw out in the report is the recognition of the importance of town centres as well. We know that in the future town centres are not mainly going to be a place that you go to acquire commodities. So much of that can be done in other ways now. Town centres need to be an experience that you want to have, and a big part of that is the getting there and the getting back in a straightforward manner. And without having something unpleasant happen to one of your tyres or wheels. So I'm really pleased that that's recognised in the strategy. The balance is a fine one because we have limited funds to apply to repairing and maintaining our roads, but I think that balance is well set. And when I come on to talk about our economic strategy in a moment, we'll pick up that theme about town centres as part of that. It's all interlinked. It's really important that that's in here, along with that broader support for businesses. So thank you for presenting that to us today.
Councillor Parry.
On a theme of upgrading, I'm not quite sure if Mr. Williams is listening, but I don't think you can upgrade from first class. So,
First class plus.
can you? You'll know that, won't you? He'll know that. This is the time of year, I think, when we notice more about our roads, isn't it? The sort of post-winter period when we're driving around and we realise that actually the repairs that are necessary haven't been got to because of weather conditions. And I also wonder whether what we're also seeing, because we haven't had the severe frosts and snow over the winter, what we have seen is a much wetter climate. And I just wonder whether our roads are taking a bit of a hit, looking at Simon, from some climate change issues here, where we are seeing this high density of rainfall that is really taking its toll on our road network, which is probably requiring a slight change in strategy in the way we deal with that, and will require a change in strategy over the future years into how we accommodate, if you like, the impact of climate change on our network. But I think what this report, this excellent report and excellent presentation, tells us is there's strong intent here. This is embedded with strong intent from this council to actually do something about this this challenge that we have, which probably will never be fully accomplished because the size of the challenge, the cost, etc., is something that the public purse simply cannot afford in one go. So we are breaking down this problem. Had we had greater line of sight on our future income streams and medium-term financial strategy this year, would have probably taken the decision to invest even more in our highways, which was the intent we've always have and still have, that we want to do something about it. We've therefore been relatively, I think, modest and sensible about the amount of capital we've put into this year. But I'd like to think that once we've got our, if you like, our modified strategy, which is this year where we are working on that there is scope for further investment that is going to be directed and targeted to give the greatest value and greatest impact. What we're not believers in, and never have been in this authority, is throwing money at a problem. We, I think, are much more analytical about the way we approach these things, and that's the approach that we've taken here. We know it's a big problem. We know it's a massive priority for lots of people. We know it impacts on our economy and on the everyday quality of life of our residents, and so that's why it's a high priority for us. And we've had a slight but important shift in policy this year that we've seen highways investment increase in our range of priorities, that we've actually put more investment into it and recognise that it cannot be sustained at the level it is at the moment. We need to invest more into it. But I think this report demonstrates that range of approaches that we're taking in dealing with this problem over the longer term, and the investment that we're making. So this is, good news on top of good news in a sense, even though right now it doesn't feel like that because we're in that post-winter roads not looking at in their best, and we need some time, I guess, to get over that, but also to get on top of the problem as we're trying to do with this extra investment. On top of the capital investment, of course, there is additional revenue spend to address some of the pothole issues, some of the drainage issues and other things that we want to restore. So many thanks to Mark for an excellent report, and to Mr. Williams.
Can I just thank you, Councillor Parry, and your team, led by Rob Salmon. The Cabinet has a whole range of competing demands for money, and we have to balance those competing demands and the expectations of the residents that live in Staffordshire. And through your good offices and those of your officers, we've been able to invest this additional money into the highways. It hasn't been an easy conversation. Let's be quite clear about it. There's an ambition around this table to do a lot more, but there's also a requirement on our part to be responsible with the money that we look after, and also recognise the fact that we don't have the 3-year settlement that we were hoping for, and we're having to deal with things in a shorter term than we would otherwise like. But you've been able to achieve that balance, and that's great that we're now able to announce this additional investment into the highways, and thank you very much indeed to you and your teams for that. Councillor Jessel.
Yes, you've just made one of the points I was going to make, which is, unfortunately, we haven't got a 3-year settlement, and therefore it's very difficult to make those longer-term plans. And I think that's reflected in a number of the graphs that have got an explanation that subsequent years you don't see that increase because we're not in a position to commit at this stage. But the one point I wanted to make is it's really welcome news that, the right first time principle is going to be used. We're going to be using a different methodology, and as Councillor DeVille succinctly described, that instead of just going to deal with one pothole and leaving the others in the near vicinity, within a specific area, potholes will be dealt with. This is like manna from heaven, I'm sure, for every county councillor on this authority whose email inbox gets filled up with complaints about potholes. And actually, I think demonstrates a very important point. A, we listen to our elected members and we listen to what the public want. And I think that's one of the key things. We should never forget that the public are the people who pay for this, who elect us to listen to them. And this is a demonstration that we're actually putting our listening and learning into practice. And I really welcome this report.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. It's interesting that in the last couple of minutes I've had an email from a parish council saying, can you fix the potholes on this road? Yeah. The whole stretch needs doing. So I'm glad that I'll be able to go back to them and say, actually, for once, it's going to be done later under the first class lead of the presenter here. Just going on to my own portfolio, public rights of way falls into this. And also it speaks to the deputy leader's point about tourism. And I think that there's an important part of this is that we're encouraging people to use our public rights of way. So I'm really grateful that we've managed to secure 114,000 and that's gone into already helping with structures on our public rights of way. But I think it's important as well to sort of emphasise the work that we're doing with our districts and boroughs, that we are working in a really clear and concise 3-tier way, so that parishes and districts and boroughs can do more for themselves and with us to help actually improve our public rights of way. And that's a really positive thing. I think that 3-tier working has never been stronger. And I am working with David Williams to try and get us to do more work to help ourselves in the local districts and boroughs. Thank you.
Councillor DeVille, could you sum up for us and then give us the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. I think Councillor Jessel's point around the, and Councillor Parry's point around the lack of a 3-year strategy, I think we've been extremely ambitious, Chairman, but cautious. And of course, we'll continue to spend the the Staffordshire pound in the best possible way through that common sense approach, through that right first time approach, which incidentally I think we're already seeing the benefit, certainly in some local pilot work that we're doing on drainage. Already seeing the benefits of that common sense local approach. Councillor Tagg, of course, made excellent points about Green Staffordshire, and I think it's essential that that was an important part of this report, Mr Tagg. And I think, you know, anything that encourages tourism, anything that encourages people to use our green spaces, our cycleways and our footpaths has got to be really, really important, not only for the economy of the county, but for our physical health and our mental health too. Finally, Chairman, if I can also echo my thanks to the officers for putting this report and this capital programme together. More importantly, can I pass on my thanks to the people on the front line, the people who go out at midnight repairing the emergency potholes that I report in Winnesdale or in Freehay or in Cheadle. These people who go out all weathers, keeping us safe with the winter operations, I'd like to sincerely thank them for the work that they do. And I really think that they're taking this on board with this common sense approach, this place-based approach where we look at repairing an area, not a defect. And I thank members for their really positive comments around this and look forward to putting all of these proposals into action, Chairman. If I may read the recommendations. Colleagues, I recommend that A, Cabinet considers the report and approves the highways and transport capital investment proposals. B, further to the above, a detailed structural maintenance and drainage programme will be developed and approved by the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transportation in consultation with Cabinet members. C, that Cabinet approves progression of the programme of developer-funded S278 or S111 highway improvement projects and delegates the authority to the Director of Economy, Infrastructure and Skills to agree the details of the works agreements and authorise the contracts for works to be entered into. And finally, Chairman, D, that the Assistant Director for Highways in the Built County monitors progress of the overall programme and is given delegated authority to make any in-year alterations in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transportation. Those are recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, and thanks to Councillor Williams in his absence for the work that's gone into that. It has been tremendous. All those in favour? Agreed. That is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 9, economic strategy, brought to you by the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. So our current economic recovery, renewal and transformation strategy was developed and agreed by Cabinet early during the COVID-19 crisis, and it was approved by this Cabinet in June of 2020. That strategy set out our immediate response to support Staffordshire's businesses, whilst also taking advantage of the opportunities that still existed in spite of the pandemic, as we continue to renew and develop and transform our local economy. Ultimately, the impacts of the pandemic are still yet to be fully resolved, but it is pleasing to see that Staffordshire has weathered the storm quite well. We have helped in that endeavour through a large number of support programmes that we have delivered here at the County Council, but also with colleagues, partner authorities and others locally, and national support measures that we have rolled out here in Staffordshire. But now the time is right, we feel, to look to the future and to develop an economic strategy which is for the longer term, and that's the paper that I'm bringing to you today. For your approval for that paper to go to consultation. Much has changed since we agreed our strategy in 2020, and it is important that we recognise not only the changing nature of our economy, but also the emerging national policy, particularly around levelling up, and the impacts that has on our strategy here in Staffordshire. It is important that we have our own strategy that complements and responds to that national policy, but it is also very important that we have the engagement with our businesses and with our wider community in terms of what they want and what their priorities are. And that's why consultation in particular is very important in developing this strategy to its final point. The development of the strategy will allow us to make sure that our interventions are targeted on the right priorities and allow us to influence and shape the approach that's taken by government, but also by regional bodies such as Midlands Engine and Midlands Connect, who have an enormous amount of influence over how particularly government spending and other investment is delivered into areas such as Staffordshire. By outlining our priorities for the economy, we will be able to shape our future work within the authority. We've heard a discussion about one key strand of that in the item preceding this in terms of our highways investment, but there are many others. But we'll also be able to influence the work of other important organisations in Staffordshire, such as our Staffordshire Leaders Board, chaired by the leader of the County Council. In terms of our approach to the economic strategy, our focus is on those areas where we feel that we, at the County Council, need to make the most investment of time and resources, and the areas where we feel that we can make a difference, whilst businesses get on with doing the rest. The areas of focus within the strategy are on our town centres, which I think we all recognise are in need of further work in order to bring them up to the standards that we want. In start-up businesses, but also step-up businesses, so businesses that are going on to that next level of growth. Staffordshire is a fantastic place to start up a business, but we don't have enough businesses that start up each year, and not enough of those businesses go on to be larger employers. And it is important that we work to help that to move on and for more people to do it. Businesses that do start up here do well, but we need more of them. We also have an ongoing journey in terms of upskilling our workforce and moving more of our workers into higher paid occupations, but also into jobs that have high social value and high satisfaction, and that is another focus in this strategy. In addition to that, and looking to government and to outside investment, it is important that we have a strong pipeline of investment-ready projects, recognising that the nature of funding is that it often comes along very quickly and you need to be ready to respond to it. But we also need to be making the weather in terms of that investment, and our focus on strategic corridors, especially the A50, A500, and I look at Councillor Jessel, the A38, is particularly important. Those are game-changing, nationally significant projects that we need to drive here in Staffordshire. The other crucial thing is the green thread that Councillor Tagg has mentioned, and our journey towards net zero and our investment in our environment is crucially important, not only for the future of our planet, but also in making Staffordshire an attractive place for people to live, work and visit. So those are the key themes in the strategy. In terms of the proposals that we have before us, the proposals are, and I'll read them now if you would like me to.
Just hold off.
Okay, I can hold off. In that case, I'll wait for questions.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. Thank you for that. And then just as I speak, my computer goes off. But I think the strategy is really welcome. It's really important, particularly in this sort of period we are now as we're coming out of COVID. Economic recovery is essential, and us having a strategy is really, really important. Just wanted to concentrate very briefly on some of the delivery, which is indicated in paragraph 10. And one of the things that's detailed there is the delivery of the South Staffordshire Enterprise Zone at the I-54 and the extension of that, which is a really good example of ourselves working with other stakeholders and other councils to be able to deliver that, which, although not in my patch, is not accessible without the use of the new motorway junction that which not so new now, which this county council was heavily involved in building on the M54 a few years ago. So yeah, definitely welcome this strategy, and I thank the Deputy Leader for bringing it to us today.
Councillor Jessel.
Thank you very much. Yes, I also welcome this strategy. It is important. It's important that potential investors know that we're determined to support new industry, create new jobs, and also the skills the skills base, as we know as a nation, isn't where we would wish it to be. And I think this document incorporates our aspirations for the future, which is most welcome. And I also welcome the Cabinet members' mention of the A38, which runs through part of my division, but through a number of people's divisions here, and is a key part of that strategic road network that keeps existing commerce moving, but also needs investment for the future, for the future development of both this county and our neighbouring counties. The one question I would wish to ask, and I think the current situation in Ukraine has actually highlighted the importance of our rural economy. Whilst I accept that it's not a large employer, the production of food and our great reliance on having to import food from abroad is coming into sharp focus. Whilst there is a lot of innovation going on within the agricultural industry, and I do apologise if I sound a little bit like the former leader, but I think as a semi-rural and predominantly rural county, I think there are some real opportunities to look at encouraging new industries, whether it's in hydroponics, to actually revolutionise our ability to grow more food rather than having to rely on imports. So I would just ask the Cabinet member if it's something that he would be prepared to take away and consider, because I think the science is now there, the need is going to be ever increasing, and I think Staffordshire is ideally situated.
Councillor Price and Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, and I just wanted to thank the Deputy Leader for bringing this to us. I thought this would be the ideal time to plug the new Business Enterprise Hub, which I believe work has now started on at the back of the Shire Hall in our former old library. A project that will bring and attract new businesses to Stafford and particularly revitalise and go towards the work that we're doing and the county are doing as well with Stafford Borough Council to revitalise the town centre, and it's really nice to see that some of that work has now started to begin. I wondered if the Deputy Leader would be kind enough to give me a rough idea of the opening or the official opening on that site. Thank you.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I endorse this also, and I think that that green thread is in here, getting that high-skilled green economy, which we need for Staffordshire going forward, is set out, and how we're going to get there in this plan. I like the focus on town centres. I think that's really key and crucial across the county. And just to plug, yesterday the Borough Council announced its blueprint for the Future High Street Fund Rycroft redevelopment, which is has been published. And it's for obviously a new office suite in the town centre for Aspire Housing, homes for people as well, and also possibly a new hotel in the town centre, and also a new multi-storey car park. That's delivering on that 11 million plus money that we've had through the Future High Street Fund. And that's happening in a lot of towns across the county, and we're really seeing the benefit of the levelling up and the Prime Minister's commitment to that. And in Newcastle, we're pressing ahead full steam. Just to move the conversation forward from what Julia was saying about the situation in Ukraine, we hear a lot about the country being almost put on a war footing economically ourselves because of the effect of sanctions on us as well, and obviously the food safety implications, the energy implications, the cost of living, and it's just a question to the leader. You know, is this policy adaptive as we go forward, so that we can rejig almost some of our priorities in the face of international situation, and particularly the energy crisis and the cost of living crisis, which is going to affect businesses as well as residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And one for me before I hand back to you, actually. It's about making sure the consultation is as broad as possible, so as many people get to respond to it. And it's only as good as those people who know that it's going on. We've got Kerry Ashdown, the local democracy reporter, at the back of the room, tweeting away like mad as we're going through our meeting and reporting on our conversations. But we do need to make sure as many people as possible get to respond to this. So perhaps if you could just touch on the mechanism that you're going to use to do that. So quite a few questions for you there, Deputy Leader, before you sum up with the recommendations.
No, that's absolutely fine. So the recommendations go into some of the detail of the consultation, but Edie, it has already begun in terms of consulting with stakeholders, so a lot of work has already been done, particularly with those partners locally that we mentioned, and our engagement with government in terms of their priorities. The point of this this broader public consultation is that it really is an invitation to everybody in Staffordshire and everybody who has involvement in the Staffordshire economy, wherever they live, to get to have their say in terms of what their priorities are. I always prefer to try and answer questions in the order in which they're in which they're asked, but in terms of those priorities, the one thing I will say in terms of Councillor Tagg's point around energy prices and some other things like that is that the purpose of this strategy is to deliver the things that we can deliver ourselves or in partnership with others, and I'll come back to partnership working in a moment, and to influence others, particularly government and external investors, where we're able to do that. Energy prices is not something we can change here in Staffordshire, but what we may be able to do is to deliver some work that helps businesses with some of the challenges around that. But we just need to be clear, this is about, this strategy is a doing thing. It is about the things that we can actually achieve here, rather than talking about things that are outside of our purview. And I just want to be really clear on that. Just answering some of the other points, Councillor Sutton regarding I-54. Yep, it's a great example of where the County Council is working in partnership with others. I must take the opportunity in terms of South Staffordshire District Council just to mention that they recently won award as Council of the Year at the Public Transformation Awards. So you know, Staffordshire is well populated with excellent councils who we work really well with in partnership, and they are key to our delivery of our economic programme. So I just wanted to celebrate that at this juncture. In terms of our rural areas, Councillor Jessel, we have a separate rural economic strategy that I will be bringing to this cabinet in the next couple of months. I wanted to give this strategy its place on our agenda today without going off onto other pieces of work. This is the overarching strategy for the whole of Staffordshire, but we recognise that rurality has its own particular characteristics. And it is really important that we are addressing those and that we're supporting economic growth, and particularly the sort of dynamic and innovative economic growth that you mentioned in our rural areas. They're often typecast as being only about one or two things, aren't they? And that's not the way that we want to approach that here. So watch this space on that. Regarding Shire Hall, an excellent piece of work that combines preserving one of our finest heritage buildings in the best way to preserve a building like that, which is to give it a purpose and a use. And that enterprise centre is due to open this summer, and I'll be glad to confirm the date for that opening once I have that. But the work is proceeding at pace, and if you want to don a hard hat and some protective boots, we can, I'm sure, arrange to have a look around it. And then moving through, I think the other points I've covered, but overall, this is a strategy for Staffordshire, for the things that we can do ourselves, for the things we can do with partners, and for the things we want to influence. And I hope, colleagues, that you will support the recommendations, which I suspect the leader will ask me to read out in a moment.
Please do.
Okay. So those recommendations are, firstly, that Cabinet approves the consultation draft of the economic strategy. Secondly, that Cabinet agrees to conduct a 4-week public consultation seeking views from stakeholders, businesses and residents on the draft economic strategy. Third, that the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, that's me, takes the draft economic strategy to the next available Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting for consideration and input, and that is already in their work programme for later this month. Fourth, that the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills and the Director for Economy, Infrastructure and Skills be authorised to agree the changes that stem from that consultation and to finalise the economic strategy based on feedback received from both the consultation and Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee in response to the government policy announcements, any government policy announcements that come in the meantime, particularly regarding levelling up. And finally, working with Cabinet members and associated responsibilities, the Director for Economy, Infrastructure and Skills be authorised to progress the development of supporting delivery plans, working with our partners as appropriate. Those are the recommendations.
Thank you. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is Agreement for Mental Health Act Section 117 Aftercare Needs, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Health and Care, Councillor Jessel.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Section 117 of the Mental Health Act 1983 places a joint responsibility on the County Council and the clinical commissioning groups to provide aftercare services for people discharged from hospital after being sectioned under the Mental Health Act. The service provides timely aftercare after leaving hospital, providing rehabilitation to enable people to live independently. The report does not propose any change to that service, but a different way of funding it, which will reduce bureaucracy. And for those who know me, I do like reducing bureaucracy. The proposal actually involves the County Council and the CCGs splitting the cost between them on a 50-50 basis, regardless of the case. Currently, at the moment, each case is assessed individually, and there are ongoing debates and discussions as to what proportion the NHS fund through the CCGs and what proportion we fund. This is not the most efficient way, and certainly not the best way in terms of the people that we're caring for. So to build on the collaboration between the NHS and ourselves, an agreement has been made that these cases will be funded on a 50-50 basis. There will, however, be a need to negotiate a transition period between now and 2024 to ensure that the CCGs have time to adjust their finances so that it is affordable for them. The annual saving to this county council after the transition period will be £4 million a year. So the proposals set out that we enter into an agreement with the CCGs under Section 256 of the Health and Care Act 2006 to enable this to take place. For those that I'm sure have read the report, paragraphs 6 and 7 in the report does set out how this split will be implemented, but I do recommend this to members. It's a pragmatic, sensible way forward that maintains the level of care that we already provide these people, but reduces the bureaucracy and is a far better arrangement between ourselves and the CCGs.
Councillor Sutton.
I think this is really welcome. This is ensuring that people who have had the misfortune to be in hospital with mental health issues are given that opportunity to be able to be cared for afterwards, so that that they recover fully and properly, and also that they don't end up going back into hospital is really important. And it's great that we've been able to come to an agreement with Health to be able to take this forward in perhaps as the Cabinet Member describes, as a much less bureaucratic manner.
Thank you. There's no Councillor McMahon.
This is very welcome, thank you. But it also speaks to a larger piece, and it's a pandemic legacy, namely that the relationship we now have with the NHS is far better than it's ever been, and these sort of collaborative ventures we hope to see more of. Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else is indicating. If you could give us the recommendations, Councillor Jessel, please.
Certainly. I recommend that Cabinet approve that the Council enter into an agreement with Staffordshire Clinical Commissioning Groups under Section 256 of the Health and Care Act 2006 related to a new funding arrangement for the provision of aftercare services provided under Section 117 of the Mental Health Act 1983. B. Approve that a transitional funding agreement be negotiated for the period 2022 to 2024 in order to ensure that this new funding arrangement is affordable for the clinical commissioning groups. C. Authorise the Director of Health and Care and County Treasurer to finalise the details of this funding agreement. I so move.
You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour?
Agreed.
That is unanimous. Moving on to the next item, a big report from the Cabinet Member for Education and Send, Councillor Price, on the Capital Programme for Schools 2022 to 2023. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really pleased to be bringing this to you today. So it is widely recognised that the quality of school buildings can either help or hinder learning and teaching. Well-designed buildings and pleasant surroundings can lead to better attendance and concentration, as well as motivation and self-esteem, factors which can improve performance. Since 2017, the County Council has invested the Government School Condition Allocation Grant, SCA for short, which is our maintenance funding, to carry out over 460 planned maintenance projects to ensure that our schools not only stay open, but they are also a welcoming environment for our students. More than 100 projects focused on reducing our carbon footprint, including replacement heating, pipeworks, controls and insulation. And another 200 priority projects that addressed property issues that the schools themselves consider a priority to improve the school environment, such as internal refurbishments, replacement lighting and ceilings, improving external areas and playgrounds, and safeguarding issues, etc. Almost 100 toilet refurbishments to reduce the opportunity for bullying and to improve the environment so that children don't see them as horrible places. And this taps into the green thread that Councillor Tagg mentioned earlier. So in 2021, we were awarded £3 million from the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme grant, and this funding was invested at 23 schools to reduce their carbon footprint. In addition to that, our maintenance improvement programme, since 2014, we have opened 11 new schools funded from the basic needs and S106 contributions, including the upcoming John Taylor Free School, which is the first secondary school to be opened in Staffordshire for over 25 years. 2 schools are currently under construction, ready for September 2022, and we're in the process of delivering 2 more for September 2023, a record which I'm really proud of with this council. The 2022-23 capital programme presented to Cabinet for approval today continues with similar themes to give Staffordshire children the best opportunities in education. All the works commissioned as part of the capital programme are procured from the environment in mind and our commitment to reach carbon net zero by 2050. Again, another plug for Councillor Tagg. Moving on, details of individual projects can be found in the report appendices, but in summary, approval is sought to invest in a capital schools programme for works to improve education standards by addressing the highest priority conditions issues, ensuring schools are safe, warm and dry through the planned maintenance programme, meet climate change and sustainability targets, deliver projects that make a difference to the school environment, that are not condition driven but will have a significant impact through the priority capital projects portfolio. And of course, refurbished toilet facilities that are designed and fitted out to a standard that discourages antisocial behaviour and vandalism. And also to replace temporary buildings that have reached the end of their usual lifespan, are inaccessible to some students and staff, and are very ineffective in terms of their carbon footprint. Staffordshire County Council has also developed short-stay resource bases within mainstream settings to provide pupils who do not have an educational healthcare plan as a preventative initiative. And again, this is something I'm very proud of and will continue to develop. Staffordshire County Council was allocated 2.4 million high needs provisional capital allocation funding in 21-22, and the aim of this funding is to deliver new school places and improve existing provision in education settings for children and pupils with SEND, particularly those with more complex needs and an educational healthcare plan. The funding can also be used to support SEND pupils and pupils that require alternative provision without an educational healthcare plan. I'm happy to take any questions before I read the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Price, for this excellent report. I would think that Councillor Tagg is almost beside himself with joy to see the Appendix 2 climate change sheet with all those decarbonised, in fact, you're in decarbonised bliss, I would imagine, seeing all those projects to reduce carbon emissions in the schools. But in general, a great set of improvements that you set out here, Councillor Price. Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. I just wanted to briefly pay tribute to the work of the Cabinet member, but also to the officers who work incredibly hard in this area, joining together the ever-changing school place planning that we have to do on a yearly basis based on the population of children that we have that need to go into our schools, which is ever-changing. That we think that we know what it is each year based on sort of birth rates and progression through schools, and then something like the influx of a group of refugees into our county who we're glad to welcome changes that dynamic overnight. And at the same time as that, we have to plan in terms of bricks and mortar, building these schools and extending schools, and making sure that they're ready, and always for September. So you get one shot in a year to get things open, and it's quite a thing joining those two things together. And I just wanted to pay tribute to the team that do that work, and also just to note that that new all-through school that we have in the programme. It's the first of its kind in Staffordshire and quite a rare thing in the whole of the country. So children will be able to arrive at the beginning of their school career and go all the way through to when they leave the sixth form, which removes one of the toughest things for a lot of children, which is transitions to different schools and different places. It's going to be one place, and I'm really excited to see that develop, and particularly as I think a net zero school as well, which other than the Bunsen burners, I believe. But great work, great developments, and that all-through school in particular should be a jewel in our crown when it's up and running. So thank you.
Councillor Price, if you could give us recommendations, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So I recommend that Cabinet considers the report and approves the school capital programme for 22-23 investment proposals set out in the supporting appendices. The Assistant Director for Commercial and Assets monitors progress and makes any necessary in-year alterations in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Education and SEND, myself. And C, delegates authority for the Director of Corporate Services to approve all subsequent call-off contracts under the CWM Framework Agreement to be awarded and entered into with the successful providers under the CWM Framework Agreement, and any innovation of call-off contracts to new providers or variations to the terms of call-off contracts in accordance with the Public Contract Regulations 2015. Thank you.
All those in favour? Agreed. That is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 12, the Children's Homes Block Contract, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Leader. This report outlines our plan to work collaboratively with other local authorities to consider block contracts in relation to commissioning residential care placements for the children that are in our care. Our first priority is always to work with families, to keep children with their families or extended families where it is safe to do so. If children do come into our care, we would look first to place them with foster care. But there are occasions when residential care is required. I take this opportunity to remind Cabinet, as well as SLT and all members and employees of this council, that we are all corporate parents and have a responsibility to ensure that if it wouldn't be good enough for our own children, then it isn't good enough for the children in our care. It is the council's current practice to secure placements via framework contracts and, if required, through spot purchasing. This can leave the council vulnerable to market forces when demand outstrips supply. One solution is to manage the supply is to implement a block contract with providers, which will allow the council to obtain placements which are more cost effective, therefore providing better value for money. And this project, as detailed within the report, is joint working arrangement with Dudley Metropolitan Borough Council with the scope to include other local authorities. I'll stop there and take any questions or points before I read the recommendations.
I always think with reports like this, there's never enough time to give the thanks to those people who work so hard in this sector, and particularly those people who put themselves forward as foster families. I was at dinner the other night with a lady, or sitting next to a lady at an event who was a foster carer, and the challenges that foster carers face when children come to them is very difficult to actually express in words. They have to deal with all the emotional challenges that the children face. And I know it's not directly related to this report, Councillor Sutton, but I just wanted to make that point and just get on record our thanks to foster carers. I know you do the annual Foster Care Awards, and we express our gratitude through that. But it is a useful point to remind ourselves. There's nobody indicating, Councillor Sutton, so if you could just go to the recommendations, that would be fantastic.
Of course, and echo your comments that you've made about foster carers. So the recommendations for Cabinet are A, procures a block contract for 13 children home placements in the private stroke voluntary sector with the ability to increase the contract where required to provide the ability to increase up to a further 7 homes, i.e. up to a maximum of 26 placements if needed. B, enters into these arrangements for a maximum period of 8 years subject to demand. C, agrees delegated authority for the Deputy Chief Executive and Director for Families and Communities to award to the successful bidder. D, agrees to deviate from the Council's standard price stroke quality split of 70% price, 30% quality to an agreement which is 30% price and 70% quality for this contract. And E, agrees joint procurement activity with a joint contract led by Dudley.
You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour? Agreed. That is unanimous. Moving on to the next item, which is the local bus concessionary payment final COVID-19 support package. And once again, brought to you by Councillor DeVille rather than Councillor Williams, who's not with us today. Councillor DeVille.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm just old enough, Chairman, to remember David Fairclough. Do you remember him? Super sub for Liverpool. I'm the new David Fairclough. Chairman, Department of Transport have made a number of significant decisions regarding public transport as the industry tries to recover from the business effects of the pandemic. The government during this time have provided various financial support packages. Now, Staffordshire County Council, we're extremely limited in how we can influence local commercial bus services. However, Chairman, what's certain is that the viability of local commercial bus network in Staffordshire is still extremely uncertain, as passenger levels certainly, together with revenue generation, certainly have not grown as per initial forecasts. This restricted growth has certainly not been helped by the Omicron variant and the Plan B restrictions which were introduced in autumn 2021. We're therefore proposing, Chairman, to extend government support for a further 6 months as a top-up to other government grants, whilst bus operators promote their services to try to encourage the return of passengers. There are practicalities, Chairman, that I think I have to raise this morning around this report. Firstly, like other industries, it's by no means certain that passenger numbers will return to pre-pandemic levels, and bus companies have certainly got a big part to play in rebuilding their patronage rates. There are certainly many commercial bus operators in Staffordshire, Chairman, and without continued financial support, there's no guarantee whatsoever that networks can be maintained at pre-COVID levels. So there are practicalities to consider. However, what's crystal clear is that without this government grant for the next 6 months, the local bus network in Staffordshire will reduce further, possibly leaving communities, particularly rural communities, without a bus service. I'll take any points that colleagues wish to make before reading the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. I noticed that Councillor Parry has indicated, I hope he's going to say what I hope he's going to say, but if he doesn't, I'll say it anyway. So over to you, Councillor Parry.
Opportunity and threat was where I was going. Yeah. Clearly, you know, there is that reduction in passenger demand, but I think there's also a threat to operators due to the cost of fuel. But I think that also brings with it an opportunity in encouraging more people to use public transport and to leave their cars at home as a cheaper alternative. And there's a marketing strategy there in the making, isn't there, for bus operators? And hopefully it doesn't require us or public subsidy for them to get their head around that opportunity and to perhaps make that more of a reality. Was that about right, Leader?
No, I'm going to have to rely on other Cabinet members, aren't I? Councillor White and then Councillor Tagg.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So I was trying to work out who the second best sub would have been in that area. So I that will do. I was Councillor Williams' substitute on one of our local BBC radio stations last week doing an interview on this topic, and the reason why they were interested in talking to us was that they've been doing some coverage of bus services, and they'd had the managing director of one of our big bus companies on, and listeners have been quite surprised when he said that, you know, our services are commercial services, we run them. Councils haven't run buses since the 1980s in most of the country. There you go, Councillor Perry, including in Staffordshire. And if you want the buses to continue, you need to get back on them. And we had a very good discussion about that. We do the things that we can to help out in lots of different areas, and this is one of them. We've kept our concessionary spend, bus passes for elderly people and people with disabilities, at the full £7 million that we paid out pre-pandemic, despite the fact that the usage went down to, I think, about 25% of that, didn't it, Councillor DeVille? We do things like that, but fundamentally, it's up to operators to make their services attractive to people to use, and it's up to people to get back on the buses. So we'll do the things that we can. These proposals, I think, are absolutely right and proper, but fundamentally it is for people to get on those buses and for operators to make sure that they're running them in a way that people will want to use them.
We are. Councillor Tagg and Councillor Jessel.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just to echo what Councillor White has said, I think, again, we passport this money through. That's the right thing to do at this time. But again, as long as I've been a councillor, the structural issue with the bus services is, I think, the operator taking sort of that responsibility for advertising and to pushing their routes. They seem to be, you know, sort of already, you know, willing to take a subsidy, and we've had to withdraw subsidies over the years, as we all know. But again, I think in the report there it says the bus industry needs to work hard to regain the customer base in the coming months. And it's a business for them, isn't it? And they need to be a profit business, yes, but they also need to really publicise those rounds and those routes so that they can make them profitable and keep them going, because as Mark DeVille said, you know, a lot of our residents rely on these services to get into shops, to get to the doctors, to get to the dentist, so it's crucially important. But at the moment, this funding is right because we're in a recovery period from COVID. Thank you.
Councillor Jessel.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it is going to be a real test of bus operators as to whether they can innovate, whether they can market their services. And the one thing that I'm very glad to see within the recommendations is that they will be asked to demonstrate how they will rebuild that patronage, or otherwise there's a potential of them just accepting more subsidy, and then, you know, you've identified that what that could lead to. I know in rural areas people complain that there aren't more bus services. Bus services do get cancelled. You either use it or you lose it. And unfortunately, a lot of bus services have got to that critical position where they're no longer convenient for people. You know, people don't want to get on a bus and have to spend 4 or 5 hours in, say, Lichfield, because that's when the return bus comes. So it isn't an easy situation. You know, there are people who rely on bus services, and the bus companies have really got to have a totally different approach. Some are more innovative than others, but I'm glad within this recommendation there is that drive from us to say you need to demonstrate what you're planning to do, which I think is so important.
So this isn't holding off the inevitable. This allows a period of thinking time and innovation time. And I would implore the bus companies to take that opportunity, because when we get to the end of this period, you just can't come back to the county council and say, give us more money, because it won't be there. So let's really work, and I'll speak to Councillor Williams when he returns. Let's really work hard with the bus companies to make sure that they do that innovation and think of new ideas to get people on the buses. Councillor DeVille, if you could sum up and give us the recommendations.
I think your summary there, Chairman, was so important, that this is a vital time for bus companies to really take a look at their business, look at the strengths, weaknesses, particularly the opportunities around that business, as other areas of business have had to. And I think you're right, Mrs. Jessel, they have a massive part to play. Colleagues, I have a number of recommendations pleased to present to you this morning. Recommend that Cabinet A maintain pre-COVID levels of concession reimbursement on all operating routes until the 1st of October 2022, in line with Government's bus recovery grant funding. B, to agree that payments to bus operators will be maintained, providing operators 1, comply with BRG terms and conditions, 2, maintain existing commercial bus service levels, and 3, demonstrate how they will rebuild patronage. Recommendation C, the Council reserves the right to reduce concession reimbursement and or to pay against actuals in instances where an operator does not comply with point B above, and asks that Transport Operations and Future Connectivity Team manage this process. And finally, Chairman, D, to ask that the Transport Operations and Future Connectivity Team develop a transition plan for concessionary reimbursement from October 2022 onwards. Those recommendations this morning, Chairman.
Thank you. Further recommendations? Those in favour? It's unanimous. Moving on then to the decisions taken by Cabinet members under delegated powers, 2 of them. First of all, from the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People in approving proposals for the future delivery of Early Years Coordination Service. And the second is the Cabinet Member for Education and SEND in approving admission arrangements for community and voluntary controlled schools 2023 to 2024 and coordinated admissions schemes over the same period. Next item on the agenda is the forward plan of key decisions. Just bear with me. Right, the following items in April in public. Staffordshire Rural Economic Strategy brought to you by the Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White. Highways and Infrastructure Asset Management Plan brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport. Framework Agreement for Demolition Services brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Commercial Services, Mark DeVille. Integrated Performance Report, Q4 21-22, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, Councillor Parry, and myself. Moving forward into June and in public, we've got the Corporate Delivery Plan 22-23, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, Ian Parry. And then you've got the Bus Service Improvement Plan, Enhanced Partnership Plan and Scheme, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport, Councillor Williams. Digital Connectivity in Staffordshire, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Environment, Infrastructure and Climate Change, Councillor Tagg. Mobilisation of Staffordshire's Household Waste Recycling Centres, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Commercial Matters, Councillor DeVille, and the Cabinet Member for Environment, Infrastructure and Climate Change, Councillor Tagg. Moving forward into July in public, the North Staffordshire Local Air Quality Plan, NSLAQP, brought to you by the Staffordshire Member, the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport, Councillor Williams. Then on into August in public, the Families Health and Wellbeing 0 to 19 service from April 2024, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton, and that is the forward plan as set out. Right, moving on then to the exclusion of the public. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of the Local Government Act 1972 indicated below. Thank you, Kerry. Goodbye.